Twisted people out there on this great Thursday. Thank you to the Twisted people who are watching this live, and also welcome to those who are going to be watching this in the replay. My name is Chauncey K. Robinson, Twisted Woman CKR, and today I am joined, and for this pretty much this whole mini series of The Stand, I will be joined by, he is a comedian. He is a awesome comedian and person. He also happens to be my boyfriend. Yes, people, we are in the same apartment, but not recording in the same room. It is my co-host, Michael Damian.
Woo! Yeah, that double room production quality energy. I love it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, we're both horror heads, and I thought it would be really cool to do The Stand, which is one of Michael's favorites and one of my favorites in terms of the miniseries. And that is what you're watching here for today, which is The Stand, the 2020 version of Stephen King's The Epic story of The Stand. And so basically this is what we're going through. It's premiering on CBS All-Access, so it's behind that paywall streaming service, or maybe not for those of you who can get to that. And so basically what we had was Thursday, bright and early at it was 12 midnight our time here in Los Angeles. It came out and we got the premiere episode. And for those of you who don't know, who might be coming to The Stand because you saw Whoopi Goldberg and some other awesome faces there, it is based on the Stephen King novel. And the Stephen King novel was also adapted back in 1994 to another miniseries, which I think was also on CBS. It might have been CBS that had the 90 miniseries, or was it ABC? I'm not sure, but
probably CBS.
Yeah, and so they had a miniseries. So you may see a lot of comparisons, but what we're going to try to do for our weekly recap and deep dive is that we don't want to get into too much jargon, and we will not try to spoil anything past what the episode gives for those who may be new to this story and coming to it for the first time and not familiar with the huge book. Michael has the book, the thick book that is The Stand, if you haven't read it. And so, we'll be hinting at it. We do want to do some comparisons because it is based off of this epic book. So you want to do some comparison for those of you who are familiar with the book and for the miniseries. So, okay, so let's get right into it. The first episode premiered, it was about an hour. Each one is about an hour long. And so basically it was an hour long. And what are your opening kind of overall thoughts about the first episode?
Way better than I expected it to be. Now, I love Stephen King. I love his made-for-TV movie stuff and the miniseries and everything he's done. Like, King was a gigantic name in the 80s and the 90s, and then he came back and everybody's loving King again. And however, there was a moment in time where CBS did Under the Dome, which is another awesome book about the dangers of fascism in a small town and environmentalism, all with a community trapped in a dome, which I love that book. Probably one of my top Kings, but this book is definitely one of my top favorites. And anyway, I bring all that up because Under the Dome went off the rails and led far away from the original material. And I know when it comes to writing is rewriting, that is all part of the process. Yeah. But I think they rewrote a little bit too much, and I was worried about The Stand. However, it's great. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great modernization of a timeless Stephen King classic.
Yeah, I think for me with the opening episode, I liked it. I was a little thrown off by the fact that it had it went kind of out of order, right? It kind of opened in the very middle. It was 5 months since the outbreak, and it was okay, what? And as someone who, we got hello to the chat that is joining us. Thank y'all for being here with us live, and to those who are watching on the replay later. Some have seen the adaptation but haven't read the book. Some have read the book fully and also seen the adaptation. For myself, I started the book and wasn't the biggest fan of just how I thought it was a little tedious. there were very long descriptions. And I am a book reader. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, I just would rather watch the pictures. I tend to like book reading, but I just felt like it was a lot to get through such a thick book. But I really enjoyed the miniseries. And one of the great things about the miniseries in the 90s was that it opened up with the first thing that happened in terms of the outbreak itself. And so they didn't do that with this one. And so that was a little different to me, because I felt like it kind of, at first I was a little worried that it took off the luster of it, because, you know, in the 90s version, you have the Don't Fear the Reaper song playing, which is iconic in association with the plague and all this other stuff. And it kind of started with them like picking up bodies and stuff. So it was like, okay. You know, like, why start there? And I was afraid they were going to do all these weird back and forth flashbacks, which they sort of did. But I will say, I felt like I started to kind of go with their flow of it. And I kind of understood why they needed to remix it that way, so it wouldn't be a play-by-play of the 90s version. Yeah. But at the same time, I was like, that was such an iconic opening. And they put it at the end for this episode as opposed to the beginning. Yeah. And it was like, why did you do that? But there were some really powerful scenes on it. Overall, I'm like, okay. I'm just okay right now. I'm not like totally blown away by this first episode, but I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm like, we'll see. I don't know why they had to remix it so much.
I have an opinion, maybe a theory on that. I feel like the main difference, and I agree with Damon Robinson down there, that the book, I did enjoy the beginning originally. I love the Don't Fear the Reaper, and just that long shot through the military base of all the people getting killed by their creation. And I really love that part. However, I feel the reason that they did what they did is because The Stand is coming back in a post-Walking Dead television landscape. Okay. Because The Walking Dead really borrowed a lot from The Stand. Like in the beginning of the show, not what it is now. The beginning of the show was very much people are dying in a mass scale. There's a lot of confusion and people are trying to band together. So it was very Walking Dead-ish. And I feel like that's what the opening thing did to pick up on that, where they're like in a church and it's just dead body central. I feel like they couldn't do that back then because A, it was the 90s and they couldn't get away with much back then. It was very limited, but maybe the creators of this one were all about, we're in a Walking Dead universe. We are post-Walking Dead TV landscape. We need to up it. Not like, wait, let's do a pan through a lab, but dead bodies cut to the chase. We're cleaning out a church and we're loading them up. Mass graves everywhere. This is how everything's going to go. Because I feel like you have to spoon feed the audience that now.
Yeah, because you kind of have to backtrack. And, those of us who are joining us live, once again, thanks for joining us. Some are saying, the idea that the Nonlinear Firebrand Entertainment is saying that the nonlinear way the show went so far is perfect. The story is huge. So, you have to cover a lot. And
you do.
I do get that, but I don't know. I just feel like that opening scene in the miniseries was such a powerful thing. And to kind of get that at the end, it was like after it's been alluded to so much, it was like, and the funny thing is, in retrospect to that, I actually thought the end scene of how they did this one was better than the miniseries opening one, though. Like it was more intense to me because you see that, it's this idea that our dark figure guy is there opening the door for him. So that was more pronounced in this one, but it was like, why didn't you do that in the beginning? And so I was a little thrown off with the different kind of way that they were kind of, I don't know. It was kind of like we jumped right into it. And I don't know. I feel like when you have flashbacks, it kind of loses the momentum and people can get confused. I think it was easier for those of us who are familiar with the show and with the story to get it. But I think, and there's a few things that we will get into that, where it was like, if you don't know this story, you might not catch certain things that maybe they kind of took for granted, like particularly with someone's like medical condition, on whether or not they have a bun in the oven or something, things like that. So that was interesting. So, okay. So we're going to jump right into what actually happened this episode. So this episode, we got the introduction to 3 of the main characters that we have so far. And that was Franny, Incel Harold, and Stu, the lovely Stu, who he was a favorite of mine in the original, in the 90s version. And I think he's shaping up to be a favorite of mine in this one as well, because it's James Marsden and he's just likable. He's just such a likable guy. And he's like the perfect casting for the role of, because you want him to win, that kind of actor.
I love James way back to X-Men, and honestly, because movie theaters closed down like in March, Sonic the Hedgehog is easily my favorite movie of the year. And the fact that this character, get to see James again, being Stu, just really kicking some ass out there in the Stephen King universe without the help of our furry blue hedgehog. I think that was a great job.
Oh, yeah, because of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, if Sonic was there, no problem. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, okay, and it doesn't even open up with him. And that was the thing too, because once again, we're not going to keep, for those of you who will be watching this and, be like, I didn't watch the 90s version, stop talking about the 90s version so much. I totally get that. So it won't be total play by play, but I think for the premiere episode, you kind of have, because it kind of sets the tone. And it was interesting that we didn't meet Stu until a few scenes in as well. Stu's such a pivotal character to this, to the story. So it opens and we get, like you said, dead bodies in the church. It was like right there, all pronounced dead bodies. And that was powerful. Like you said, it kind of had a Walking Dead. For those who don't watch Walking Dead, it's a zombie show. How do you not watch The Walking Dead? At least the first 6 seasons. And no comment on the other ones. But it deals with the opening scene of the church. And you're getting these people. And what we know already, what we're told in the opening, is that already 7 billion people have died. And I remember writing in my notes, I was like, already? We're already at the part where 7 billion people have died. Okay, cool. We're just getting right into it, like we said.
And the big difference between this one and the original, sorry 90s haters, is the original one literally begins with the T.S. Eliot quote, this is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, this is the way the world ends, not in a bang, but with a whimper. And the tone of that poem kind of gradually escalated. It was very linear. It was like, oh, here's what's going to happen. Oh, we're in June. Oh, man, can't wait to find out what happens in,
like how
in November. Yeah. So that was good. And I also think that this happened, because Americans' attention spans are shorter. And also, when The Stand came out, nonlinear filmmaking was still very much frowned upon until a lot of independent filmmakers came in, mostly
like
Tarantino with Pulp Fiction. Yeah. Allowed other people to see you don't have to do a plot, linear wise, although you do run the risk of confusing your audience who's never did anything related with The Stand.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. So then we get an update and we see who we don't know who that is yet, Harold. Yeah. And they're going through a thing. He sees Tom Cruise magazine and Tom Cruise is now in The Stand, y'all, which is interesting because I think James Marsden in most of his career was always compared to Tom Cruise, like the other version of Tom Cruise. So then you have Tom Cruise on the cover of Us, and later, because Harold, we got to talk about Harold for a little bit.
Yeah, we do.
Because there's a little bit of an update to him, but he's still the same kind of incel sort of Harold. And for those who don't know, when I say incel, I'm talking about those people online who kind of hate women. for whatever reason. They're kind of angry, virginal for black, for whatever, and things like that. And it's just, it's kind of been associated in years with like school shooters and things like that. And, Harold had a bit of that in the 90s version. And I think this one, I don't know, I just found him so sinister. It was just, he just really was so creepy. And it's only the first episode. It was like, I am so creeped out by this guy.
Yeah. Basically, to help out Chauncey even more, basically you listen to her talk and I'm just like looking through people like, what's Chauncey talking about?
That's exactly.
Like that was Harold in this first pilot episode. And it was very weird. They definitely fleshed out Harold more in the made-for-TV version. And he just didn't look like a nerdy writer like the first half of the original Stephen King one, who just finds leather and just rocks out with the wrong people all throughout. So I don't know how this one is going to like portray it. And I thought it was interesting. I hope I'm correct, but in the original made-for-TV version, he got his poems published. And he ran over to Fran. And he's like, I got a poem published. And then this one, he's a terrible writer. And then he's like, remember that nail I put on the wall? Well, I put all my rejection letters up there. And I'm doing it for you. And it's like, whoa, dude, calm down. I don't know if that was like Stephen King reacting or making a caricature on the worst version of himself.
Mm-hmm. There is a little bit of that, and you see that throughout this episode where he's like because I mean, this isn't the first like Stephen King story where there's a writer there or something like that, or a guy, and you have the Harold version of that, who is, like you said, maybe the worst version of that, of someone who actually isn't successful, because a lot of time in the Stephen King ones, the writer is a successful guy, but maybe he's an alcoholic, or maybe he's just going through stuff. But in this one, you have a guy who never actually made it. So maybe it's this reflection of the thin line between what success can do and what isolation can do that we see with Harold, because, he's an outcast, he's a creeper, he's getting bullied by the boys. So I feel like they try to paint this sort of like, you sort of feel bad for him because he's beat up and stuff like that. But then you see some of his actions like towards Franny, who we also meet in this, and, him doing a certain thing with his with his lotion in his bedroom to her picture and things like that, kind of peeping Tom on her and whatnot. And so it's kind of like, I don't know, maybe they wanted you to, feel some type of way, but then kind of go on this journey where this guy he's not sympathetic. Or did you feel like they were trying to create him more as a gray character this time around?
That's a very good question. In the beginning, I was a little worried that I kind of liked Harold in the beginning. I'm like, wait, why is this going the way this is going? But they kind of fleshed him out and they made him a very well-rounded character, as opposed to like the miniseries version of it is he was kind of like standoffish a little bit. Like he got angstier the more that somebody wrote in the comments. Yeah, Damon, he's like, he was good until Stu stole his girl. But
that's the thing, she wasn't his girl.
He wasn't.
This is why he was so delusional. Like,
he wasn't. Was
the
gone.
World's going. There was always a sort of kind of darkness to him, even in the beginning of this episode, because he gets the gun from the cop's car, which was smart, but it's also kind of like, why are you getting a gun already? Like, what's happening here? He's listening to the radio person, and the person shoots themselves, and he's like, like there's something missing with this guy. But and I kind of like how they laid that groundwork.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I feel like they updated Harold for the modern incel of 2020.
Yeah, with the computer and stuff.
Yeah, and the actor does a terrific job.
There was another aspect of that where when he's talking to Franny, he actually mentions the idea of, haven't you seen it all over the internet, the conspiracy that this was something, and he's actually right, it was man-made. But the fact is, once again, leaning into that stereotype of an incel guy who's on the message boards, who's listening to these conspiracy theories, QAnon and all this other stuff. So they very much, I feel like some people may feel a little triggered watching this.
I know, right?
Carol. And then maybe in a dangerous way, some of them might actually, identify with him on some level.
No, I think you're right.
Yeah. And then we got Franny. So Franny in this one is not played by Molly Ringwald, who was the darling of the 80s and the 90s. So you have another actress who I feel like they kind of changed the characterization for this. She's not as bubbly. No. She's a little bit more practical, which, I thought was a decent change. I felt like it would have been nice to spend a little bit more time with her and her father, because we didn't get, like you were saying, I think that we didn't get a long kind of conversation before he was dead. No.
And I'm just where I'm really conflicted about the remake is that, like all remakes, I feel that while it did a good job, I feel that some of the emotion and the heart behind the acting was kind of taken away. And I don't know if that was like 90s melodrama and made for TV movies, but I feel like it's like, oh, we're all in this together. Hey, Fran, dead. And but I feel like the actor in the original one, even though it was only on screen in the beginning, I still remembered him. And he was so an emotional guy. He had all the love and care for Fran that he wanted the best for her. And in this one, all I saw was just another dad. Yeah. And I agree with that. And but I do think that burial scene. That they made up for it. I mean, that was bad. The thing, and it also goes to the way that they're displaying the sickness in this one. They're doing this gross thing. They're doing this thing with the neck. And it's just so gross. And like she's burying him, and it's a beautiful moment because she's putting his war stuff on him and his medals, which is awesome. And then it's like she tries to turn him over, and this visceral sound of his body organs kind of moving just in all the wrong ways. And it was just kind of shocking for a moment. Even I think as an audience member watching that, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so just raw there. Because in the original had amazing effects when it came to makeup. And I didn't expect that. You bring up a fantastic point that in the 90s version, everybody looked kind of candied, or they were like rotted flesh. Now you could still kind of tell it was a prop. And the candied, like, what I mean by candied, it's like kind of shiny, but in a sick, nasty way. And in this one, everybody has like Mitch McConnell neck. And like it kind of shows like that's what the pandemic does to you. And they really highlight that it's a respiratory issue. Yeah. Because your neck is completely blocked. Can't hardly breathe. Yeah. No, it was just really intense. And I mean, you can't watch this show without like thinking about the context in which we're in right now, right? Yeah. This is, like big ups to people who are actually like us trying to watch it right now, because it kind of hits close to home, watching this thing, people having to bury their loved ones and things like that. And it takes on a way different kind of darker kind of tint listening to the radio of the thing about the radio stations and how people there are basically the president was on the radio, and he was saying, oh, it's all fine, don't worry, we're gonna keep the line, keep towing the line. He's coughing, he's sick too. And it's like wow, okay, like it kind of infused that, because it was emphasizing the idea of no one knows what's going on, and there's such a hands-off approach because no one knows what's happening, as opposed to the other one where it wasn't necessarily like that. It was more of a way more intense kind of, people are wondering what's happening, but we're going to try to get the truth out. And this one is just kind of like, well, everything's cool, guys, Yeah, that's another thing. I know, like, probably the great people at CBS didn't plan on a global pandemic wiping everything out, but the whole government, this was a man-made issue. Um, like, I really like how they dug into that. It was very timely somehow. And the people involved in this current pandemic have been involved. They've been running the place for like the past 4 years. So it's very easy to just maybe grab hey, what if the government did this, because this is how they would respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that made any sense. But I feel like the government issue was spot on.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, we have Firebrand Entertainment in the chat saying, is the goal of this show to be a better adaptation of the book or a remake of the 90s? I think the former. And they're still taking creative liberties, as Harold isn't even mentioned until chapter 28 in the book. And I think that is it makes sense what is being said. I mean, but the thing is, you're going to have a lot more people who have watched the 90s one than who have sat and read that thick book.
And I'm going to reread this book. I'm a big fan of the book. I got it when I was in 8th grade, and that was like the last time I read it. But I love the made-for-TV miniseries.
Yeah.
Love it. And the book is just that memorable. But thank you for the little tidbit about Harold in 28. I think he was brought in the 90s to kind of further the story a little bit.
With Franny.
Yeah, with Franny, kind of escalate that. But that was a very good point, Firebrand Entertainment.
Yeah, and then I think, we had the commentary, the power starts going out. And what was also interesting was the tall grass dreams that were going on. It kind of reminded me of one of the more recent Stephen King stories, In the Tall Grass, that you can watch on Netflix. And it had that kind of foreboding what's going on. And that's when we see Mother Abigail, played by Whoopi Goldberg in this one. And it's only for a brief moment that we see her. So we're getting kind of glimpses of the dreams, but nothing too intense just yet. It was very based in reality, this episode, not so much the fantastical dreams and things going on just yet.
It felt really close to home.
Yeah, with that. And then, I thought what was also interesting, getting back to it, Franny being a little bit more of downtrodden, is I don't want to. Okay, so they had emphasis on her belly in this first episode, but I kind of wonder, and then we see a flash forward or a flashback, whatever it is, wherever we're at in this timeline of how they're telling the story, that she's pregnant and she seemingly is with Stu at this point. So that's interesting. I did wonder if they were trying to, I did wonder if they were trying to maybe throw us off, for those who aren't familiar with the story about her pregnancy and what that's about, and whatnot. But also in this one, she attempts suicide.
Yeah.
And that was wasn't expecting that. I felt like it's very interesting that they have Franny coming from a very low place with this story.
Yeah, and another thing, I don't think they could probably do that back in the day on TV. With Fran, I don't think like suicide would be like encouraged on TV at the time. But I do like this refreshing take on Franny that isn't like, oh, Daddy, the people on the radio were talking. Whatever could they talk about? It's like,
no, exactly. It's not this kind of woman in the, lady in distress kind of a deal. And that's what I really like about this characterization of Franny for this one, which I wasn't expecting. I was like, oh, she's really grounded. She told Harold off, like when she was burying her. She was like, I am not your, babysitter anymore. And that it was really because she wasn't kind of tiptoeing around the idea of saying you were a creeper and I was awkward around you because I didn't want to be around you. But then we have that moment where they're on the couch after he's, seemingly, I mean, he did save her life, whether she wanted it or not. And we see this moment. And of course, awkward Harold is this moment of them on the couch. And I think that was the other gray moment of it, of like, he did save her, with these characters and whatnot. So I thought that was interesting the way they did it. And then and like I said, all this is going on, and then you have Stu in the facility and the government not knowing what the heck is going on, and seemingly Stu can't get sick and whatnot. To me, one of the most poignant parts in that one was the last moment with him and the general, and the poetry that was read there. So they kind of put a different poem for this one. Yeah. With him in the facility.
Wasn't it like the Ozymandias poem?
I think it was Yeats.
Yeats, yeah. Yeah, but I've heard that poem before, and it was brilliant. I really love, definitely a highlight of the newer one. Well, I love the older one because they added like the lights and the creepiness of it, and then it's just all these candied, half-dead lab guys going, "Play it again for me," and they're like all delusional, and Stu has to fight his way out. I really like the fact that Stu was able to get along with a few of the doctors in this one, and it wasn't that much a cat and mouse. But there was a military dude who hated him. And I'm glad they still.
It wasn't even that he hated him. He was just, he was following his orders. He had no care for it. And I do agree with that. Like, there was a little bit more of a balanced view of the military.
I appreciated that, I guess, as like the kid of a Marine. Yeah. Like, that was really cool to watch. And I was like, oh, there's great people in here too.
Yeah, that it's not just, the government is just, screw everybody and whatnot. So there was, and I feel like they're trying to do this kind of gray area when it comes to a lot of the characters, except for Stu. I think Stu, Stu's a hero. There's no gray area with Stu, and that's fine. Stu can be the hero and whatnot. But we did get some glimpses of the Dark Man going on in there, of Randall Flagg's and the Evil Man, in particular with the end scene when it came to him. I really liked that scene. That was a good scene. And I love that he's making an appearance. He made sort of an appearance to Harold. He was the catalyst for Campion getting out and pretty much spreading it around from the facility. And I love how in the end you get that glimpse of him in the rear view mirror. I'm like, that was creepy, yet also alluring, I also thought it was also interesting because if people have been paying attention to the news on this, someone, I don't know why, someone described him as a sexy Trump, the way that we're going to get Randall Flagg. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure what that exactly means.
I kind of get it. And I'm sorry if we're going to run off a few people who are currently still contesting the election. But when Trump became president, I immediately thought of The Stand. Randall Flagg, not just because, maybe he could kill us all, but the fact that this is a man who has been immersed in wealth, in vice, in lust his entire life. And he has, casinos. And he's just this angry man who, in the original miniseries, like the climax of the film, took place in Las Vegas. And I was like, wow, no better person than, Trump to be Randall Flagg. So and Melania Trump could easily be, I don't know what the direction they're going to take in this one, but in the original one, Melania Trump reminded me very much of Nadine.
Okay.
Yeah. Which we'll talk about more later on if she appears. If not, who knows?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see the way he plays it, because I think for someone like this character, there has to be a certain allure, right? Like, how do you get followers? How do you build this kind of movement behind you if you don't appeal to people in some type of way? So I think that's going to be interesting, but I'm glad we got little glimpses of him and Mother Abigail for this one. And I kind of like, the all denim look, and
tuxedo came back, baby, from '95. Where was his mullet? Where was it?
That's what I was wondering. It didn't give him a mullet, but he had the slick back thing. They had to update it. I thought that was a good one. I mean, it was. I don't even want to call this first episode slow. We have. There was a question on how long this one is. There's about 9 episodes. So it's going to be a 9-hour journey with these characters and the whole, the whole story. And, rumor has it that Stephen King, well, it's for sure that Stephen King wrote the final episode of this season, but that what he does, rumor has it, is that he is expanding it to go beyond the story that Stephen King fans who already know the story would know. So we may get an expanded version of what we know and what people who are familiar with The Stand know versus what is. So, I think that'll be interesting because maybe it'll be a different kind of expansion, but I love visually how this episode looked. I thought it was slick, but not too slick, I hope that they don't rely too much on cheesy CGI or anything like that.
That was the only flaw in the original one.
In the 90s one, yeah.
Yeah, they had a character who I hope comes back called Trash Can. And every time he was a worker for Flagg, and I don't know if they're going to do it in this one, but he had like the picture of like the empire that he was building. And it was like, this was made on Windows 95. So.
And it's like, I don't think you need to lean on that too much. They've done a great job, I think, with the practical effects of this one so far with the way the sickness looks. If the whole thing with that neck thing is going to be the main thing we're going to be watching, I'm already creeped out and grossed out. So I think that's enough in terms of, what they need to do. And we'll see in terms of, what kind of powers Randall Flagg ends up having. We had a little glimpse of a strip joint in a desert when it came to Harold, so that'll be interesting because I think that gives hints of where people might be heading, where are their strip joints and things like that go on. So
yeah, it was very that older portion of Las Vegas, like old downtown Las Vegas. I think that was a neon light from there. And that would be cool because Vegas is a little different now, 30 years later. And the cool thing is old Vegas is still there. So I'm wondering, going the Vegas route, what part of Las Vegas will Randall Flagg do as base of operations? Will it be Trump Tower? Will it be MGM Grand? Will it be, we don't know. I'm excited. They bring stuff that the book had that they couldn't do back then. And they're really bringing the two versions together in a way I love.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And like I said, going forward, we won't talk so much about the 90s version, which we're calling the original, but it was just another adaptation. It's, it's the original is the real book. People. That's the real source material. Like was said earlier, the real version is the book itself, and how they interpret that. They don't have to go by, the 90s version at all. But of course, there will be, comparisons. I think they have a lot of space there with the more time that they're getting. We're doing 9 to 10 hours of a show, which is the first time that's been, explored with this particular story, having that long with it, because the 90s version did not. And there's going to be commentary. I'd be surprised and somewhat disappointed if there wasn't commentary about the current situation when it comes to a plague and everything like that. So I think we'll see where that goes. And with Flagg, I'm excited to see how that performance goes. Like I said, I've seen other reviewers say that he's a sexy Trump. And I guess I'm going to be the judge of that. I don't know if I'm going to go with that description just yet. There's been other dictators in our past before and stuff, and fascist types. So I guess we'll see if he compares or if he does his own thing with it.
He might be a sexy Mussolini. We don't know. Or
the fact that
we don't know.
It's peak 2020 putting sexy in front of any of the dictators.
Yeah, it's like a
sexy Mussolini. No, he's like a sexy Trump or Hitler or something.
With a sprinkle of Kim Jong.
So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But it was an opening. It was an opening.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Thank you once again for having me on. Sorry I'm interrupting. I was thinking about everything you brought up about Mother Abigail, And I really thought it was fascinating how in this one, it's like, I'm old Mother Abigail Whoopi Goldberg, and I'm going to tell you everything that's happening right now. You're going to get caught up to speed. The world's going to hell. Okay, stand. And then like, wow, okay. They like spoon feed you the info that you're going to get in this as opposed to learning as you watch. And I don't know if that is a criticism on how modern television is currently being written or what even, but I thought that was wild.
Yeah. So you felt like
Hitler was sexy. We said Mussolini.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
yes, we need to highlight that.
Of them are sexy at all.
No.
No, not at all. But so are you saying you think that the script so far seems more like tell me instead of show me?
Yes, it's very much that, but they tell you everything, but they show you what they couldn't in the 90s. So there's a very weird balance. It's like the world can end, you're gonna die. Oh, here's Harold, here's a creep, here's Franny, she's depressed. And then it's like dead people. Like this is just like I felt very spoon-fed. But at the same time, there was one good show, and that was when Stu was in the medical facility and the hamster was perfectly fine.
Yeah. But even that was explained to us about why the hamster
was very like.
But that's storytelling, though, in the terms of, and like you said, like with the American audience too. Sometimes you need to kind of tell us, you know.
Yeah. And Firebrand Entertainment. That's a very good point. Yeah, I just before we got on, I read the opening before it went into part one, and what I loved about the military base escape is the fact that it was very true to the book. And I know Chauncey and I were talking about earlier how in the book it was more likely that the family that escaped was Black.
Yeah.
And they kind of changed that in the made-for-TV movie version.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I mean, there's a few. We're gonna. I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit more. There's a few characters that have been changed in terms of the cosmetics of what that will mean for the characters, right? What that will mean in terms of where their origin story is. I'm thinking of one musical leaning character in particular in this adaptation. But yeah, it's really interesting because and I mean, I saw it. I was like, yeah, it's more diversity in this show. But I thought about it. I was like, and now it's this idea that it was this guy that left out and caused this. I don't know how I feel about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but it's a human situation. So you don't even have to put race on it in that regard.
I just like how diverse it was and actually true to the book. I'm sorry if I made it awkward out there out in TV land. But I apologize, guys. I wasn't going down a MAGA route. You heard my Trump views already. But I just really like how they were allowed the characters to play as they were written, and it's not everybody was just automatically turned white.
Yeah, and we have Firebrand Entertainment who is pleading a very strong case throughout this whole broadcast about how this is a book adaptation in the sense, and that the book is nonlinear, which is why this is probably more of an adaptation of the book first scene in book. Is the soldier whacking his wife up. Next is Stu at the gas station. And I totally get that. This is the thing though. Books versus how you relay something on a television doesn't always, it can really be confusing to viewers versus someone who's more adept to, you know, the way a book might set it up. You know, and that's, you know, and like I said, I'm just reflecting on what some other people have said online in terms of reviewers and everything, saying it's out of order in the sense of it might be confusing to people. And that was my one caveat. That was my one issue with it. I'm like, I don't mind it because I know the story. I think it might be confusing to other people who are coming to, because don't you want to bring in other people as well?
Yeah.
You need to make that a little bit more approachable for them. If you don't, then you have a whole bunch of fans watching it, which is great because there should be many, but you also have the problem that, you know, it might be off-putting to those who aren't as knowledgeable, I think.
Yeah. And I know, I believe the movie The Dark Tower had that problem too, how it was just kind of like crammed together. Like
that wasn't nonlinear. It just wasn't good.
It just wasn't good to begin with. And that was another reason I was afraid, because the King adaptations have been either really good or what? Why are we
they're hit and misses. Yeah.
This is definitely more of a hit for me.
Yeah, and I have people tend to think it's a controversial opinion that The Shining with Jack Nicholson, I didn't like that version of The Shining. And neither did Stephen King when it first came out.
Stephen King hated the film.
Yes, yep. They hated that. And then I saw the ABC adaptation, the miniseries version of that. I thought it was way better, so when it comes to it, it can't be hit and miss, and it depends on.
I'll never speak of that movie.
Yes, exactly. But you got the hits and misses, because I love Dr. Sleep. Dr. Sleep is like one of the best movies of a Stephen King story. I just love that movie. But then I didn't like the newer version of It, Chapter 1 and 2. I enjoy the Tim Curry version better, but that's also debatable. So I think we'll see. This is the premiere episode. So, there's a lot to get into, but I think they kind of gave us a little tidbit. Hopefully it won't take too long to see the other characters. I got some other characters I want to see, although I do like Harold not like Harold. He's an interesting enough character. I like the 3 that we got. I love Stu, but I'm looking forward to seeing some others for sure.
Very much. And, do we have time? Can I bring up one character that wasn't hardly covered in this one?
Did we see a glimpse of him?
Yeah, a little bit. We only heard a snippet. And it was the radio DJ. Like, I feel like there is more of an emphasis on this.
Oh, yeah. The radio
of this is what the government did, and the government royally messed up. And now we're all dying, and we don't know what the government's saying, which is very relatable to now. But back in the 90s, there was more of an emphasis on freedom of speech.
Yeah, you had Kathy Bates.
Yeah, Kathy Bates was like the radio host, and he's like, listen, this is America, and I'm not going to let the guard in. Like, hey, buddy, you need to wait outside. And then pip, 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 pip. And then, oh my God, Dad, they're doing it. And like, I just really enjoyed that character, and the fact that they made the media just so much of a backseat character in this one.
Yeah, it was kind of like it played over, and it just kind of happened, and then everything goes dark, which, once again, I think it's context, right?
Yeah.
And it's also the thing of what we were saying about how they were painting the military in that version of a little bit more of a strong arm of, you're going to follow the rules. You need to be quiet, stop spreading this, versus a little bit more of we don't know what's going on either. And if you had that scene, it would have seemed a little, I feel like, heavy-handed. If you had, so they should have killed a radio DJ, as opposed to the radio DJ killing himself like he did in this version.
Exactly. And one thing I just thought about as you were talking about that, maybe we will see a few little snippets as they introduce other characters in the next few episodes, because we only brought up like 3, like the 3 ones, and then the good and the evil going on in the back. But I'm wondering if we should, I hope, see how the plague plays out for the other people, like Larry Underwood. And
there's going to be a lot of jumping around. That's the thing. They set the tone for this is going to be jumping around. And I feel like that's a choice, because you only got 9 episodes. So yeah, it makes sense that you need to fast forward and come back, as opposed to showing it so that it's all in linear. So you show everyone's journey going at the same pace. And then maybe in the middle of the season, they all meet up, kind of a deal, or if they are supposed to meet up. This one, they wanted to kind of just jump into it and kind of show you things, because that could be debated as good storytelling too, that it's like, well, we're not going to depend on you not knowing. You can know this because this is still good enough of a story that you can know the future and the past enough, and it's still going to stick. So
very true. I don't feel like, hey, people are going to die in this movie is a spoiler alert.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that was pretty much the premiere episode, but we do have a little game that we want to play for this season, which is, who do you identify with most this episode? So each episode, when we do this weekly, we want to say, who do we identify with most in this episode? I will not be saying Harold. Don't worry.
No,
okay, but which character did you identify with most in this episode?
I'm going to go the macho route and just say Stu Redman all the way, baby. Yeah, of course, because everybody wants to be Stu when we're all a little bit Harold inside. But yeah, a little bit of Stu and a little bit of Fran. And just so, like, in the pandemic, I'm not suicidal. And but in a pandemic, when you just don't know what was going on in the world, you don't know what to do, and you're just really somber, and it just gets to you. Yeah. And so sorry, there's no chuckles here, but like part of that was like, Fran, I feel you, girl. I've been there. And then there's other parts about Stu, like, thankfully I haven't caught COVID. But, as a healthy person right now, I'm just like, I want this to be over. I want to find out. I want answers.
Yeah, I get that.
And I totally feel. And then, like, as a writer, I've been rejected before, and I haven't gone the Harold incel route.
One character. You're doing all three.
So okay, Stu Redman.
Okay, you identify with a hero. Okay, we got. Yeah. And also, I have incel tendencies in Harold. Like, okay.
No. Publishing, writing, as a writer who's been rejected by writers before in the past.
Yeah. Okay. So before I give my answer, Dark Phoenix in the chat actually said, I don't know if you're going to do a Stephen King movie. I think that you should have Stephen King there to help direct you so that you can get the movie right. Just my 2 cents. And I totally agree. And I think one of the things it seems like he has a hand in this because he's writing the final episode, or he wrote the final episode of this particular adaptation. So, but then again, Stephen King has, said in other projects that he really enjoyed the way it was going. And I've come to not like some of those that he liked, like the newer version of the It movies. And he said he really loved that. And I was like, nah, like that's not as good as it could be. But then again, he said he loved Dr. Sleep, which I also thought was amazing. But I agree. I think you have to kind of, so, you know what's going on inside the person's head. I mean, it's Stephen King. He has his ideas, Yeah.
Even like in It Meets the Goonies Part 2, I like the fact that even King called out that, the endings are sometimes bad. And he knew that, and maybe that's why he's constantly trying to rewrite his stuff.
Yeah, maybe. And get the ending right, because, that's a big criticism for Stephen King stuff, that the endings kind of fall flat with some of his other stuff. So with him writing this final episode, he has a chance to rectify that. Because the ending of The Stand is, at least the 90s version I saw, it was okay. It was kind of anticlimactic to me. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes with this, that we'll all be seeing a new one. Damon Robinson in the chat said he identifies with Stu, but when I'm in the mirror, I'm definitely a little Harold. Practice makes perfect. Yes.
I totally get that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We all want to be Tom Cruise. He funds bakeries, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And well, for me, I think I identified with the soldier in the book, the one who ends up trying to take his family out. And I'm not saying he was right, but I will say for me, I think I would have done the same thing. I would have probably seen it as a sign that the gate didn't close, even though it was this dark figure that was holding it open for, his own reasoning. I might have done the same thing and bounced, even though now we know he caused this global pandemic, or more so it was the government's fault. It wasn't his fault. It was the government's fault. But I would have done the same thing. I know I would have done the same thing. I would have bounced. I would have went to go get my family, and I would have said, let's try, if I got a chance, let's take it.
Yeah. So, I totally agree. And I love the subtlety where the new one kind of, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if I was a little bit confused, but was Randall Flagg a wolf? Did he embody himself as a wolf in this, or was the wolf the other thing?
We don't know. For those who are not privy to the books and stuff, and we don't want to we don't know, who is it?
Because in the movie, he was a crow. And then in the opening of the episode, the crow is dead and pretty much messed up on the beach. And okay, I kind of like this. And
so you think they switched it out?
Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to go back and reread the book. But I did like it how he was the wolf. I think I may be wrong. I don't know. Maybe old Mother Abigail embodies herself as a wolf, but she was also there. That's my only confusion on
What's
this.
the symbolism with the animals,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I guess we'll see. I mean, it's only an opening. I think it leaves a little bit of a mystery. Firebrand Entertainment saying the last book that had a horrible ending was Under the Dome. Every book since has been perfect.
Oh man, I totally agree. When we talk Under the Dome, oh yeah, I read that book. I know the feeling, and I died inside when I watched the series on CBS, which makes me feel great about The Stand.
Yeah, exactly. Dark Phoenix saying, I remember that Stephen King said sometimes endings are bad in the movie It too. I think he was throwing slick shade in a way. Yeah, he was. That was a scene in It Chapter 2 where he made an appearance to a character that was once again a writer, a successful writer. Harold, if he actually became successful. And he says, basically, great books, endings suck though. Of maybe just self-deprecating himself or whatever he once said. So I think he's probably aware. So maybe that's why he might change it up with The Stand for this miniseries.
And that's what reminded me of Harold, because Harold never gets published. Maybe it's because Harold's endings always suck.
Yeah.
But I like that. And I'll change my answer. I identify with Randall Flagg.
Oh,
not because he's the devil, but I wear double denim all the time too.
Okay, so you got the Canadian tuxedo, the double. Denim. All right, and Damon in the chat is saying in this he had a wolf shadow. Okay. So
it was him.
So he's doing did he do both? Was it the wolf and the crow?
The crow was dead in this one, but all he did was embody the crow in the mini series of the 90s.
In the 90s. Okay, well I guess we'll see as it. And I hope that we get more of him, because sometimes the villain is always a little bit more interesting than the other characters. But I feel like they're graying up some of the characters we know, like Franny and Stu, enough to kind of balance that, where they have a little interest in them as well. Okay, so we're winding it down. I think usually with something like this, I would say let's do predictions, but because it is a book adaptation, most likely, and we know it, I feel like it'd be kind of,
Firebrand Entertainment.
Yeah, to be like, oh, we predict, and it's like next week we say, see, we were completely right. So we can't necessarily do predictions, but I guess we can say, what do you want to see for the next episode? What are you hoping kind of gets shown a little bit without kind of spoilerish?
Other people's journeys with old Mother Abigail, and she calls herself that in the book. I'm not being ageist. And Randall Flagg. I'm looking forward to that, because that was just my favorite part in the original. The individual characters' interpretation of what is actually good versus evil. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that, and how Mother Abigail plays a part, because I was thinking that even though old Mother Abigail wasn't really introduced in the beginning of the older one, I think they put her in the beginning of this one because modern screenwriting rules dictate that you have to have all of your main characters in the very beginning of the pilot, or else they shouldn't show up.
Okay.
Even though Mother Abigail kind of felt out of place in this one, I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. And just my girl Whoopi in general. I'm looking forward to just more of that.
Yeah. I think Whoopi Goldberg's going to be a great Mother Abigail. So, yeah. Damon Robinson saying he wants to see Larry in it. And
Baby,
Larry.
You're a big old man.
MON. That's what Damon said. Yeah, that's my fit. That's what I'm looking forward to too. There's a lot of things I'm looking forward to, but like I said, I don't want to alienate people who might be coming to it for the first time. But I am looking forward to certain other characters that I really did enjoy. I like Stu the best. Franny wasn't my favorite, and of course, neither was her. I didn't particularly care for that whole thing, and at times the character kind of annoyed me in the 90s one. So I'm interested to see where they go with certain other characters and their journey. I'd like to see that. I don't want to jump to the part where they're already at the neighborhood and stuff, where I want to see their journey before that. And I think as others, I think the chat is a little split when some people are for the nonlinear and others, you know, are like, no, I don't like the fact that they're jumping around. So it'll be interesting if they keep that pace for the whole season. I kind of hope they don't. I kind of hope that maybe this was just a glimpse and that the rest of the episodes, they just kind of, you know, keep going, you know.
No, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't have all the main.
They've been saying they didn't have all the main in this episode as well. So
I heard they're doing 3 characters at a time.
Each episode.
So it'll be interesting to see how they do that each episode. And then I think after they introduce all the characters, then it's going to be like, this is where we are between the battle of good and evil.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, we got nine or so episodes to get there. Okay. So that was the premiere episode of The Stand. Thank you so much to those who joined us for the live. And for those who are watching the replay, I appreciate you. Michael appreciates you. Be sure to subscribe, to like this video, to check out the other videos. I do movie reviews, TV reviews, all in the name of horror and dark fantasy. And that's why we are doing The Stand. And we will be doing this on a weekly basis. So join us next Thursday for episode 2. Make sure to catch it however you catch it, with it streaming on CBS All-Access. No judgment on how you watch your streaming service paywall type thing. And yeah, be sure to let us know in the comments what you thought of this episode, what you're looking forward to. And did you read the book, or are you just straight up the 90s fan? Or maybe this is your first time watching this whole story in the first place. Let us know, comment down below, and also be sure to subscribe. And I'm Chauncey K. Robinson, aka Twisted Woman CKR.
And I'm MOON. That spells Michael Damian.
Thanks for joining us, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you. Happy holidays.